Our next speaker, I'd just like to introduce Shirley Shackleton. We are honoured today to have Mrs. Shirley Shackleton speak to us. Shirley's husband was shot by the Indonesian military at Balibo in East Timor at the beginning of the Indonesian invasion in 1975. And she is known around the world for helping the East Timorese with their liberation. Recently, Taur Matan Ruak, the president of East Timor, honoured her with his government's Ordem Timor-Leste for her work during the struggle and ever since. Importantly for our assembly today, Shirley was on the Lusitania Express to East Timor in 1992. The mission of the Lusitania was like our Freedom Flotilla, to highlight the people's ambition to be free of Indonesia and its abysmal human rights record.
Thank you for that. You, of course, are you all hearing me here? And I'm not spitting into this. It's quite hard not to sometimes. I heard this morning that America has just agreed to sell $500 million worth of Apache helicopters to Indonesia. And I want to know who's going to invade them. Tonga? Tassie? What's it for? It's for the West Papuans. We all know that. Because I'm afraid I have to tell you the reality. Governments don't care. They only care about trade deals. So that old saying, money is the root of all evil, applies to our government, to all governments in the world, and especially to America for doing this disgusting deal. That's what I heard when I woke up this morning. I do want to acknowledge the Kulin Nation here, because everything we have, everything we've ever got, and everything we ever will have has been got at a loss to the Kulin Nation. And that's also what's happening, thank you, also what's happening in West Papua. Yes, when I first heard about the Lusitania, it was a car ferry. And I said, what a good idea. Oh, I'm glad I'm not going on it. It's the truth. Always tell the truth. And then when people started ringing me and saying, are you going? I said, are you kidding? I wouldn't go on the Albert Park late on anything that's called the Lusitania, because those of you who weren't born then, I wasn't either, but I have an interest in history. The Lusitania was a ship filled with civilians and children, women and children. It was sunk by a German torpedo in the First World War. An infamous name. And I mean, as if anyone in their right mind is going to try and go into Timor on the Lusitania. But I went anyway. Because a lot of people kept ringing and they seemed to think that if I went, we wouldn't get sunk. I suppose they actually thought the Indonesians wouldn't want to sink an old grandmother. But I think they would have, because they actually came, they didn't try, but they did a few things that weren't very nice, I have to tell you. My husband wasn't actually killed during an invasion. He was killed well before the invasion. It was an attack team sent to murder the 5 Australians because they were going to be able to give the story out that had been kept very quiet, and that was that the Indonesians were attacking the border for a whole year before the big invasion. The journalists were killed in October. The invasion took place in December. But the propaganda dreamed up, millions of rupiah were spent with Western public relations firms to think up propaganda, and to say that journalists were killed during an invasion gave DFAT here that it was their own fault, they shouldn't have been there. You know, they should have been home in bed in Australia, of course. We should all stay in bed and then nothing would happen to us, okay? So I just want to tell you that the Lusitania was a huge success, not only because the Navy, we had 12 battleships came out to try and turn us around. It was a very impressive way to wake up early in the morning. In the darkness, I was sleeping on the deck because someone stole my cabin. I could see these lights following us, and someone came out and said, that'll be the Australian Navy helping us. And I went, oh, grow up. And the sun came up, and it was 12 Indonesian battleships. They were the clapped out ones that they'd bought from Germany that caused the Tempo magazine to be closed down because they had criticised all the money spent on these old German battleships, and they're the ones that came out after us. I won't go into a lot, but we were told not to make any noise, not smile, not give them no opportunity to do anything to us. What they did do is, as we were turning around to come home, because obviously we weren't going to get in, the captain of the leading ship came very close to us, and I did think for a while there we were all going to go into the drink. But we didn't. Our captain was a brilliant sailor, managed everything. But I want to tell you, you never know when you do something like this, how it's going to end up. And this thing was an enormous victory, which I don't think most of the people on board actually understood. When we got back to Australia, I heard a report that Timorese were streaming into Dili to welcome the Lusitania. That immediately put paid to the ridiculous propaganda that the Timorese didn't want Portuguese back. And so many people streamed into the city of Dili that the Indonesians had to close off all entry points. So that was the great strength of the Lusitania. And they wasted millions and millions of rupiah of money spent to say to the world, no one in Timor wants the Portuguese back. That's why they speak Portuguese now, of course. They didn't want it. So it was a wonderful, wonderful thing to be in. There was one funny thing. That morning, when the sun started coming up, some Australian helicopters came over and started going over. It's a car ferry, not a ship. And one young fellow, an Oxford graduate, woke up going, oh, and he looked up and he saw all the battleships and these helicopters, what do you call it, swooping over the vessel, the craft. And he said, this is the most exciting sunlight I've ever seen. So there's always a laugh around the corner. It was a very serious business, and I have to say I'm very relieved that this deal with America has taken place now, because they won't get them yet. So the flotilla won't be attacked by these Apache things. So thank you for listening. Hi. Thank you for listening. I wish you luck. It's a great privilege to stand in front of the Morning Star. I've never done that before. I'm very pleased with myself for being here. And I don't know what to say, because we used to finish off with Viva.
Merdeka! We say Merdeka!
Merdeka! Of course, I should have remembered that. Okay, all right, after me. Merdeka! Merdeka!